Well, welcome back to the pod. I'm excited for our first female guest, Annie Mitchell, who's on the team with me on our sexual wholeness team. Annie, we got to come up with a better name than sexual wholeness team. But I'm so pumped you are here. She's on our larger staff care team as we seek to care for our AIA staff really, really well. And man, God's just been using her an awesome way. So I'm excited for you guys to hear kind of how the Lord has been in and through her story, and then how God is using her to bless a lot of women and guys like us on the team and just help teach us. So Annie, welcome to the pod. How you feeling about this?
I'm excited. Glad to be here. Glad to see the other side of what I've been watching you do. So yeah, it's good. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
Well, you've seen a couple of the episodes. You know how we roll. We just want to hear from you. And I think people are going to glean a lot from your experience. Kind of walk us through your story. Why in the world are you part of a sexual wholeness team? uh, uh, I know more than most how that feels trying to explain to people what it is you do. So, man, just tell us who you are, kind of what makes Annie unique and you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I guess if we're all part of the team, that means we probably all have some sort of history here. Um, but it's just the guessing game of what it is. Yeah, I am on this team because the Lord has done incredible things in my life to provide a lot of freedom for me. And I just want to be able to help other women experience that as well. So part of my story is a lot of hiding and shame, just because the church didn't do this well where I grew up, and just the Christian culture that I was surrounded by growing up produced a lot of shame, and so it just led me to hide a lot. So for me, my story, I like knew God was real and Jesus was real and was the thing to follow at a really young age, which I think plays into the fact that I think the Holy Spirit really protected me in a lot of ways, and convicted me in a lot of ways that come in later in my story. But at a young age, I started noticing that the way all my friends that were girls were talking about all their crushes on the boys in class were the same way that I was viewing some of those girls. And I was like, ooh, something's different. I was like, this isn't matching. None of them are talking about their friends, like their girlfriend, like friends that are girls, like this way.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, just growing up in a Christian space, I believed and was genuinely convicted by the traditional biblical sexual ethic of, yeah, marriage being between one man and one woman. So the fact that I was having some same-sex attractions, I was like, I don't know what this means. I don't know what this leads me to. I don't know, yeah, what to do with this. The Christians that I grew up around was a lot of what we would call like pray away theology, um,
Mm.
where we just say like if you're praying and it's not going away, then you're not praying hard enough, or your faith with Jesus isn't that real, or all these like you're not doing enough. And so that was scary because I didn't ask for these desires, and they just came, and they weren't going away. And so with that, I just decided to hide, because I also didn't think that that was God's design for marriage. And so I didn't know what to do with it. So I just decided to hide, and I did it pretty well, I think, for many, many years. But that also produced a lot of addictive habits in my life. I struggled with masturbation and soft porn, eventually self-harm, alcohol abuse, and all these just different things that were all ways of just coping with all the built up shame that just kept on building and building and building.
Right.
And my mental health was declining and declining and declining. Um, and then I finally joined staff with AIA, and I started being in spaces where women were talking about these things in honoring and dignified ways. It was a process of coming to AIA and like having shame stripped away and having God's truth and love like reclothing me, and recognizing like, yes, we are all broken. That means we are also all sexually broken. Like every parts of us are broken. And so for me, this is just the way that I'm sexually broken. And so with the same sex attraction. And so that just means that I'm called to obedience, just like everyone else is.
Mm.
And what does that look like? That looks like I will either be single the rest of my life and not marry, or God will change my desires and I'll marry a man one day. Both are great options. I personally currently love being single. I Teller's seen the fact that I can just travel whenever. And I'm like, send me. I want to go. I have a dog. He's great sometimes. And yeah, and great people too. Obviously,
So
there's still
good.
desires that have and stuff, but like, it doesn't, yeah, single life is pretty great. So I'll just say, that's what led me to where I am now. Just wanting to teach women like there's freedom. We don't have to hide. Women struggle with these things too, and we're not any less of a human or a woman just because we struggle with these things. And yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. That's a brief or long version of it, but there you go.
It's a great version because it's not shared amongst believers.
Hmm.
And it's what I cannot imagine how high the percentage of believers who need to hear that, hey, yes, there's sexual brokenness, but you're not weird, you're not unique. Um, and one, we're sorry for the way the universal church, the big C church has handled this in the past. Especially kind of the catch 22 of the way they've handled it among like especially straight men of yeah, guys struggle with lust and all this stuff instead of saying no, that's sexual broken. That's you can honor God in a worshipful way the same way Annie's honoring God, and we're all let's bond together and crush sin to the glory of God, and let's walk in
Hmm.
obedience and see what he does. So I can't tell you, Annie, how much respect I have for you and just love every time I hear you open your mouth in front of a group of people and share because I know I've been in these spaces, they don't get to hear that. And what a
Hmm.
refreshment it is for probably so many women. So I'm really
Yeah.
thankful for you being here and I'm thankful for you for having the strength and the courage to share that with us
Yeah.
publicly because I know for many years that was not an option. And I know a lot of people are watching
Yeah.
this going, how in the world can she do that? It's because you have faith. You trust the Lord and you've
Yeah.
seen God use it.
Yeah.
And I know also for a fact that everybody that just heard your story, just the briefness that you shared with it, has more respect for you now.
Yeah.
And that's
I
what I
appreciate
remind
that.
that's what I remind people is I share my story with people. I'm like, do you respect me less or more? And all the guys were like, oh, more. I'm like, share your story. Quit being
Yeah.
scared. Like,
Yeah.
let God be glorified out of your brokenness. So thanks for that. So, Andy, tell me what it's like on staff when you're loving on women who are struggling with mental health, or maybe they've struggled with sexual brokenness. What does it look like coming alongside of them? Difficult, messy? How do you get this idea of vulnerability is contagious to come out of them?
Yeah. I it's so it's so fun to finally be in a position where I can help push along all the things that were helpful to me. And like understanding their fears. A lot of times with women, and so when I speak, it's not prescriptive for every woman, but I would say the majority of what I see and what I've felt is um that a lot of women just don't feel like they can talk about this. A lot of women feel shamed by this. And a lot of times, I mean, it's the same thing with men too. Um, but the conversation in a lot of churches and a lot of Christian communities have just been focused around men, and or always given in male examples. And so when women can finally speak about this, and it's like, nope, it happens to you too, and
Mm,
like, and it's okay. And so it's the idea of creating freedom and from shame. A lot of the women I talk with, there's a lot of different reasons I'm talking with them. Whether it's a pornography addiction, whether it's just yeah, having a lot of sex in college or whatever it might be. Some of it comes from trauma too. I think it needs to be acknowledged. Like there are a lot of women that are assaulted and abused and raped, and that also then can create addictions from there. So, and I know that happens for men as well. I think the percentage is a little smaller, but it might be more. Maybe men just aren't reporting it. But like, yeah, so women feel like they have to hide. Women feel like they can't say these things because then they're dirty. That's what the church taught for a really long time, is that
Yeah.
women were dirty if
Yeah.
anything, if they did anything like this. And so once you're just able to say like you're loved, you're pure, you're just loved. Once women can hear that and know that, a lot of it's just untangling what messages and lies are wrapped up with whatever addiction or whatever past experiences they have. A lot of women that are in the groups that I lead might not necessarily have a present addiction, but there's still ties mentally
Mhm.
to shame and to lies that just have to be pulled out and rewritten. And so that's just a lot of what I'm doing with women, is just helping them identify the lies that are being told to them, that they're believing, and that they're operating in, and then rewriting it with God's truth.
So good.
And yeah.
Well, I get a lot, I've never met anybody like you, T Mac, that's doing this kind of work or whatever. And which is true. Most people haven't met somebody, a guy like me that's doing what y'all really haven't met somebody like Annie. Because if there's not a lot of guys doing this, there's no females doing it. So maybe you're a female watching this. We need more of you to step up. Maybe reach out to Annie. Just let her
Absolutely.
train and equip you. Let her love on you, because the shame is greater, I think, amongst women.
Hmm.
And that's part of the problem with church culture, the way
Hmm.
we've done things the last 50-ish years here in the United States, really globally. But yeah, so what you're doing, I think, is incredibly important. Now, we work with athletes and we work with ministers, athletes, and we work with coaches. You wrote an article that I thought was it's really before its time, even though this time has hit us in the face, because this is coming to college sports. It's an article about how to handle pride games. And if you're unfamiliar with what we're talking about, especially in the professional circles, most like MLB teams or NHL teams will host a pride event for their games where they'll have special uniforms or jerseys, and they'll celebrate gay pride, essentially, is what it is. And I believe it's going to be hitting the college campuses like a whirlwind soon. It hasn't really, that I'm aware of, but it's coming. So walk us through kind of just the thesis of your article, and how you're encouraging athletes to handle that when they're a part of a team that says we're going to do a pride event, because we want to love people that are same-sex attracted, that don't hold to our faith, but we also, man, we have our convictions. So what would you say? Kind of give us the gist of the article.
Yeah. Yeah, it was actually funny. I get asked this question a lot when I speak. And it's half the room knows exactly what I'm talking about, and the other half is like, wait, what's happening? So it's kind of interesting like seeing it emerge. I know the university I went to, it was every team, almost every team had one of them or had a pride game. So to me it was like, oh yeah, this is happening. And
Really?
then I found
Wow.
out that it wasn't happening yeah. I don't know, but that's not the point. But yeah, it's happening in the professional world. So yeah, it will bleed down to yeah, everywhere. Um, but yeah, so the idea of it is to, it's not, it doesn't give an answer. So if you're like, great, I'm gonna go read this and get an answer, I'm sorry, it doesn't. And I won't. Because I think in every situation, either option of wearing the jersey or wearing the warm up is possible and also not possible. Or not possible, but it's like you could either wear it or not wear it. And I think it really depends on you, your situation, your relational dynamics, the conviction above all of the Holy Spirit. And I think the Spirit convicts differently on things like this. And so, um, yeah. And so if that immediately makes you frustrated that I don't give an answer, I'm sorry. I had a friend read the article and she was like, it's really good. However, I'm so frustrated with you. And she goes, why? And I was like, why? And she's like, I thought you were going to tell me what to do. And I was like, nope, I'm sorry. I'm going to make you think. Because yeah, I think we need to pray about these things. I think the thesis or the main point of the whole thing is discernment.
Hmm.
And discernment's hard. It's not an easy thing to do, and it takes time, energy, meditation, prayer, sometimes fasting to figure out what to do. And that might seem extreme for something that's like you could also just pass off of, whatever. But I think as Christians, we're called to be a part of the world, but not of it, and but also loving. And so what does that look like? This is a nuanced and complicated space. And so being able to spend the time in prayer and meditation, or not, yeah, just prayer about this, like I think is really important.
Mm.
And so basically the idea of it is walking through what it means to love God and what it means to love others. That's the greatest commandment, as it is written, to love God first and then to love others. And so when it talks about loving God, it's I walk you through the idea of like, okay, how do we securely have our identity in God? It doesn't matter what other people say about us. It doesn't matter what people think about us. It only matters our identity is God, and so, or is in God. And so like that's where it holds. That's what's most important. And then the second question of loving others. Okay, what is loving to your community? What is loving to your teammates? And speaking the truth and being bold and standing on not wearing the jersey, and also speaking truth on loving others and wearing the jersey, can also, and like support can also, yeah, I don't know, both are possible. But it really depends on certain things. And so I think there's a couple questions in there that kind of help you think through this process. But yeah, it's discernment and it's prayer, and above all, the Spirit. I think yeah, I think that's the end of it. I don't know. It's really good. Go read it. Sorry if you're going to be frustrated with it. But I think everyone could be in a different situation, and it can lead you differently into a different space. And you're going to get backlash either way, no matter what you do. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what other people say. It's a matter of like where your identity is in the Lord. And it matters, yeah, just how you're following those two commands of loving God and loving others. And yeah, relationally it'll look different. So
That's so good. Uh, I will link the article, making a note for myself in the notes below so people can go be encouraged and frustrated at the same time. But you hit it as discernment. Um, and the greatest commandment, love God, love others, that's not easy to do.
no,
I mean, it's
no,
easy
not
for
at
me to
all.
say, oh, does this have to do with homosexuality? No, you know, but then are there others involved in it? Well, how do I love them in the midst of it? Okay, I can, that's most often it's going to look like having a direct and encouraging conversation with them. So when I read your article, man, I just thought there's going to be a lot of really, it's going to be frustrating for a lot of believers when pride games come to them. But I see some incredible gospel opportunities coming through these and incredible relationships with people who you're vastly different than. And that's a good thing that you're going to
Hmm.
come together and they're going to see your heart behind maybe why you're choosing not to wear the jersey or why you are with some hesitations or whatever it may be. And just because somebody chooses to do something different than you doesn't necessarily mean they're not a Christian or they're in sin or whatever it may be. Um,
Hmm.
that they have a unique relationships on that team and they're pursuing them with the gospel. And that may look different
Hmm.
than what you and I would do. So good
Yeah.
job. Don't envy you in how to how to handle
That's,
that
yeah.
situation. Not fun. I don't want that job. Glad you're on the team. Appreciate it.
Hey, happy to be here, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So Annie, tell me why. I mean, you could do anything. I mean, you could just be on a campus, not that this just be on a campus, sharing the gospel with students. Why is what we're doing, training people in sexual wholeness, so important?
Mm. Um, it's a it's a big part of our lives. I think mental health and sexual wholeness are huge factors of how we operate as just human beings day to day. And I think if we are striving for health in both of those places, along with our spiritual health with the Lord, like I think we can be empowered to do more, and also just like There's a lot of just like big vision words, but also like just practically you're not living in shame. Practically you're more free to be yourself, and to love others and teach others those same things. Like I said, like a lot of women, it's just, yeah, okay, I believe this lie that I'm unlovable. Okay, so that means how I function every day will be out of the belief that I'm unlovable. And so how I will perform in my job, how I will respond to text messages, how I will interact with strangers on the street, will all be out of the belief that I'm unlovable.
Hmm.
And obviously, and that's tied to all these things. And so if we're able to work out those lines, and get God's truth in there, and walking through life as I'm a person that is loved by God, loved in past tense, like it's already happened, and it's present. That means like the way I respond to people in text messages and on the street and this stuff will want to one share that love with others, and also two, yeah, I'm just walking with more confidence in who I am and what God says about me. And I think that is the most important thing. And I think that's just one example of a lie. I think I say this a lot in talks. I don't know if this answers your questions directly, but whenever I speak, I think the most important thing for me above all um, might not necessarily be that someone changes their behavior. Obviously, that's the symptom that will be produced of these three things, is that someone knows who they are, what God says about them, and what has done about them. So like what God says about you, what God has done for you, and your identity in Him. And if those three things change and to truth, if people understand those three things, I think symptoms and everything to follow will produce a confident, healthier, yeah, person that will want to share that and do that for others. And so, yeah, it's the multiplication, it's discipleship, it's one person at a time. I know you talk a lot about discipleship, and just, yeah, focus, like if we do this, everything else follows. And I
Right.
say, yeah, if people understand who God is, what He's done for them, and what He says about them, those three things, the rest will follow.
And that's
And
why
so, yeah.
and you've seen it when you get somebody to, when that clicks in their brain, they're workhorses for Jesus. And they read scripture and
Yeah.
they're just worshiping. Uh,
Yeah.
that's why we do it. But if you don't address their sexual brokenness, which they've made 99 times out of 100 their identity for so long, then man, they're hopeless in their
Hmm.
pursuit of an intimate relationship with the Lord. And that's our job, is to bring people closer to
Hmm.
Jesus. And so that's why we want to do that. That's why I work so close. That's why I'm sold out to this, because I have found selfishly that if I can get a guy free from his pornography addiction, man, I've just made a machine for the Great Commission. I mean,
Hmm.
he's like, I don't have to whip that guy into shape or anything. He's going, he's running free because all those three things just clicked in his brain. He knows who he is in
Hmm.
Christ. He knows what Christ believes of him and what Christ has already done for him. So he is off and running. So yeah, I'm grateful for that you just spoke into that, Annie.
Yeah.
So tell me seriously, last question. If you and I were to have a race on the Appalachian Trail, who would win?
At first I thought the conversation was starting as a joke, and then as you went, I was like, "Oh, this is a serious question," and it went back to being a joke.
But you knew me
Unfor
too well.
Yeah, yeah. Here's the thing: I'm really slow uphill. I mean, everyone hikes differently. I am slow uphill, but downhills, my knees are good and fresh, and so I
You
can
can go.
fly.
You make up
And
ground.
I've made up a lot of ground. One day that I was going downhill for like 3,000 feet, and I did it so quickly. Yeah, it was, yeah. So all to say, if you were going uphill all the way, you'd beat me probably, no easy. Up and
Gotcha.
down, I feel like I got a good chance. Yeah.
I knew Annie would have a good answer to that. She's hiked the Appalachian Trail and she is hopefully planning a staff get together on the trail. How sweet would that be? Or at least where we're all outdoors. Um, but yeah, so
Yeah,
I love that you knew I was joking, but then you're like, but I was such a good prankster that I fooled you for a brief second. You don't know
you
me as
sure
well as
did.
you thought, Annie. So,
Yeah, you sure did. Sorry if you saw heard some growling. That was my dog. No, there he goes.
well, hey, this is
That's
a
funny.
last question I ask everybody.
All right.
Um, if we have somebody listening that's just on the fence of maybe there's a female that's never shared that, hey, I have some same-sex attraction. Um, they hate their sin, they want to fight it, uh, but they've never shared, or they have somebody that, like I share with guys, they're looking at porn. What do you say to them?
Mm. Hang on a sec. Sorry. You can edit this. Just wants to have attention. Um, okay, can you repeat the question? I'm so sorry.
Somebody's listening to us right now that's never had the conversation with anybody else. They've never shared their story. They're tired of their sin and they want to worship God, but they're like, I don't know if I could talk to anybody about this. What do you tell
Mm.
them?
Yeah. Well, honestly, with same-sex attraction, like I get it, especially with the church. And I want to tell you to go talk to people, but I also understand that there aren't safe people out there. I mean, there are some unsafe people out there. Hopefully are more safe people than unsafe, but I know in my experience in the church and different communities, even counseling, like I've gotten really bad advice and hurtful comments. And so um, my encouragement for individuals who are same-sex attracted is to find a church or find a minister or someone that has proven themselves to love God more than anything, to
Hmm.
love God more than any, yeah, I don't know how to say it. Social standard or cultural thing that they are truly following God. And honestly, it's okay if you test them a little bit. I know I've tested people and I know that's mean,
No.
but sometimes you have to put out like a couple tests out there to see how they'll respond to like, oh, you know, are they going to respond hateful and stuff like that? And I hate that I have to say this, to be honest. I hate that I have to say this, but it is true. There are some people that have been hurtful. And I don't want to tell someone to go do something that would put them in an unsafe situation mentally, physically, spiritually. Um, and with that, the solution is talking to people. And so at
There you
the end
go.
of the day, you do need to find someone that's safe and you do need to talk to someone. I understand and I think it's okay with same-sex attraction if you need to be cautious about that, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it.
Right.
There are solutions to that. I'd be happy to reach out to anyone. The uh, Center for Faith, Gender, and Sexuality, I think.
Mm.
We'll put in the show notes. I'll send you a link. If you contact them, they'll help you find churches that they've vetted that are safe. It's a great organization, has a good board. So there are things out there that you just have to find. But at the end of the day, you need to talk to
You
someone.
got to do it.
Even at first, if it's just a trusted friend that loves the Lord and loves you, yeah, that's a good place to start. And obviously, that doesn't mean that they're unqualified. Even if you are a friend wanting to love someone that is same-sex attracted, like you can be a good listener and that kind of stuff. And so, community is needed. That's what needed. Same-sex attraction, I think there needs to be a little asterisk of like not everyone's safe. Um, yeah, because real hurt is out there. But however, that shouldn't stop you. That's not an excuse not to do it. So,
Yeah, I guess that makes sense when like I work with guys, I think they immediately learn that I'm safe, even though it's not as prevalent as in the same-sex attracted world. But what they learn is, man, I'm going to hate their sin. You're looking at porn, dude, that's a bunch of crap. Stop it.
mhm,
Um, but I'm going to love them and get them out of it. In the same way as you can
mhm,
find people who are faithful to God's word, faithful to the Lord. I love that you said somebody who loves God more than anything, loves more God more than the social pressure of accepting everybody. They're going to accept you because Christ loves you, but they're not going to accept, like, I don't accept where my guys are. Like, I'm
Hmm.
like, no, you're greater than this because he who is in you is greater than your sin. So I think that's a wise word to find the right
Hmm.
people in a safe way, and especially a wise word from coming from you and somebody that's not in that area to maybe send out a feeler, a test to make sure that, hey, I'm not just going to get shunned, but I'm actually going to get the help and the encouragement that I need. So
Yeah.
love that, Annie. So thanks so much for coming on here. Like I said, so much respect for you. So grateful for you and your ministry. I think God's going to continue to bless that. I think God's going to continue to use you in mighty
Hmm.
ways just because you're bold. I mean,
Hmm.
he honors boldness for him and risk takers for him. So I'm so grateful for that. Thanks for being here. And
Yeah.
hopefully we can
Appreciate
do it
it.
again in the near
Yeah.
future and get a lot more women on here to
Yeah.
share
I'm
their
all for it.
stories, right?
Yeah. I'll find them. I'll get them to you.
You'll get them to me. Thanks. So, well, I always remind
Yeah.
people of this, and I'll remind you. I tell all my guys, you can't screw it up because you're not that powerful. Like God's in control and he loves you so much. Your sin is not so great that Christ hasn't covered it and can't use that to influence other people's lives. So if you're watching, let that be an encouragement to you. Thanks for being here. Share this with somebody that you know. Share this on your social media because who knows who it's going to pop up in front of, and God's going to use that in amazing ways. In fact, I got to meet a really cool person just a couple of weeks ago who somebody shared one of our posts, and because of that, he connected with me and would never have known us. So, I mean, that might be a really great way. It cost you nothing but could change somebody else's life. So thanks for being here. Thanks, Annie. God bless.
Thank you.